All right, guys, Rich Lohman here, Lohman Leadership Group, one of the many, many names I go under. I'm here as an opportunity to say I help people inside of organizations, whether it's an organization of one or an organization of 5,000, but I help people that feel like they're spinning their wheels. They know they got the potential to get the results, but they're just not doing it, and they're exhausted by the effort. That's what keeps
Mm.
me going every day. I got Dave Rudin here with me. Dave's been a long time thinking partner, thought leader in the leadership and development space, advanced leadership. Dave, tell us, more about what keeps you going and what your why is.
My why is that I help people and organizations to get better results at the end of the day through more effective leadership
Yeah,
and which is the simplest way of saying, yeah, you got to, it's about developing people and developing yourself, and like we're going to talk about, getting clarity about who you are and where you're going. And so that's my biggest thing, sharing hope that better is always possible, just
sharing
adding
hope,
value to people.
adding value, yeah, better
There
as
you go.
possible. I love that because that's when I think of Dave Rudin in advanced leadership. That's what I think about. I think share hope, add value, better as possible. People are the most appreciable asset.
Mm-hmm.
That's I think about
Yeah.
that with you all the time. So you guys, like the rest of this conversation, we're gonna classify it. Yes, it's gonna be about clarity because clarity, as I'm gonna unpack a little bit, is a topic that I think that we have a huge crisis on right now, and I can talk about some of the things that it's the consequences of lacking clarity. But forevermore, this is just two dudes with good ideas. And that's
That's the
really
name of
what
the
it is because
podcast.
anytime that Dave and I get together, if Lee's here, it's two dudes and an amazing woman, but Lee's not here. Two dudes with great ideas. So clarity, I'm just going to frame it up a little bit, is it's
Yeah.
not just not knowing what to do. It goes deeper into you don't have a clear structure to your days and your weeks. I keep asking people that will come to me and say, "Oh, I just have so much to do," and I'll say, "What's your plan? Show me your plan. Send me your plan." What do you mean send the plan? I said, "You've got something written down that's your plan, right?" No. That's the problem. And that really is
Yeah.
it because knowing what matters right now is important. Having boundaries to protect your time and your energy, operating inside of some sort of predictable rhythm. That's what we're talking about when we say you have
Yeah.
clarity, you have plan, you have structure, you have boundaries. Without it, what I'm learning is that you don't know what to do, and that might leave you frustrated and exhausted. If that's the case, and you might lead other people, they don't know what to do. There's no plan for them, so they're waiting and looking at you, and you don't know because and maybe you're frustrated, and when you're frustrated, you take it out on them because they're not doing what you want them to do that's in your head, but not on a sheet of paper. All of a sudden you take it out on them and they're frustrated. And some of the byproduct of this is people shutting down, people quitting, turnover is
Hmm.
high in a lot of
Hmm.
organizations. So we're going to just spend some time unpacking pain, benefits, characteristics, maybe some steps that people can take. Um, this started because I created an inner capacity assessment. The quick story of the inner capacity is I was struggling personally because I was I had a lot of changes in my business where I lost a team member and I took on all of their clients. I had some bad clients and I didn't have a plan to navigate that. And so I was burning out in typical me fashion. I go on a walk and I talk to God and I'm like, God, this is really hard right now. And he says, yes, yes, it is. And then I said, and what makes it deeper hard, more hard, is that it's hard because coaching people that have no plan is very hard. It's very difficult for a coach to help somebody that doesn't have a plan. That's where you got to meet him. And he says, yes, people have a lot of unmet needs inside of them right now, and
Hmm.
it's showing up on the outside of them. The unmet needs are energy and recovery, clarity and lack of plan, lack of human connection. We're using AI so much, and we don't have the support from a human when we need it. And it all deteriorates our confidence. We don't have how can you have a belief in yourself or a belief that you're going to follow through on a plan that you don't have written down? So confidence inside of businesses right now is at an all-time low, in my opinion. Dave, what do you see out there? You're similar, different? You just talk to me.
Oh, oh yeah, gosh, it's the number of times that conversations come back to the lack of clarity, that clarity being the identifying marker as like this is the gap. It is, I mean, if I had a nickel, I wouldn't have to do this anymore. If I had a nickel for every time, you know.
Amen.
but
Yeah,
but you know, no, it is. It really it comes back. Everything comes back to that again and again and again. And what you say, the repercussions of it are so profound that I don't think we recognize that. Yes, think about what naturally happens when you don't know where you're going, is that you slow down or you stop. And so momentum and any forward progress gets slowed or all but stopped because you don't know where you're going. It's just I've used the illustration before. It's just like you know, when you're driving in a storm and when the rain is driving down really hard, and when you lack that visibility, you can't see where you're going. You have to slow down,
right.
and that's exactly what happens in our life. That happens in our teams, and so you start to see that ripple effect happening, where then productivity goes down, and efficiency goes down, effectiveness goes down, because if people don't know what to do, they will go to the default mode of just doing what seems right at the moment.
Right.
And when we talk about priorities, like they may not be the most prioritized things, it may not be the most important things. They oftentimes we go to the easiest things, the quickest things, the stuff that's right in front of us, and it may keep us busy, but it doesn't make us effective.
Exactly. And you hit it out of the park. You know, I think one of the biggest pain points I see when I talk to people is that they're overwhelmed.
Yeah,
In a byproduct of underpurposed, and a byproduct of not having the plan, and a byproduct of not knowing priority says that then you will be overwhelmed, because how can you differentiate item number 10 on your list from item number 60 on your list? If
right.
they're all urgent, they're all important, then you're overwhelmed.
Yeah,
So, to anybody that's listening to this, if you're overwhelmed right now, stop, collaborate, and listen. No, stop and make a plan. Right? It hit my head, but like, stop and make a plan. And if you don't know how to make a plan, call Dave, call Rich. We'll just be your thinking partner to make a plan, but you can't keep doing this. That's what I keep seeing, is this is a definition of insanity if people don't know how to make a
yeah.
plan, that they just keep trying to tread water.
Oh gosh, it is. It's so funny. Right before we hopped on, I got a text from somebody that I had connected with, I don't know, a long time ago. In fact, I kind of don't even remember who this person is, but they just said, "Hey, I'm sorry it took so long to get back. I've been busy, and so I've been and procrastinating." I'm like, that's exactly what happens. Is like when you're overwhelmed and when you're busy, when you got stuff going on, you just put stuff off, you put stuff off, and you just do the easy things right in front of you, and it doesn't get you to where you want to go. And so, yeah, I think that is that's the ball game right there.
Yeah,
It's what we need to do for ourselves is have a sense of purpose and direction and and uh, the vision of where we're going, and without that, we can't lead other people down that path too. And so you see that happening in teams as well. So when teams don't really
right.
know what they're supposed to be doing at any given moment, that's the whole. I think it was Andy Stanley that always talked about every team member needs to know in an emergency break glass. You know, when an emergency break glass, kind of like this is what I do. That level of precise clarity is so lacking,
Right.
not just in emergency situations, not just in like, hey, when it's chaotic, but it just in the day to day. Like, where am I going? What am I doing this week? What am I doing today? What is the most important thing that I need to do today?
Maybe out of order, maybe, perfect timing. But when you just said that, it makes me think of, I got on the phone with a person out in Idaho. Uh, she's a thought leader in the alternative medicine space, has a lot of clients in alternative medicine. And I said, "What are you seeing?" And she says, "Everybody is fatigued. And a lot of people will say it's because of the number of changes that come into their environment." And I think,
Mm,
when you talk about, in case of emergency or just every day, break glass and this is what you're supposed to do. If
yeah,
that is changing every day, because a leader is consuming too much information, or a weak leader that has FOMO, fear of missing out. Well, we should try this. I heard my friends doing this, and we should try this, and we should try this. If that's what you're doing to your people are running
yeah,
for the hills and looking for
yeah,
safety of another job.
sure. Yeah,
So
it creates, yeah, it creates chaos in there for sure. I heard a an interview with Kevin O'Leary, the guy from Shark Tank, the bald
yeah,
guy from
yeah,
Shark Tank, and he was talking about, he used to work with Steve Jobs years ago, and he was really dialed in. One of the biggest lessons that he learned, he said, in with him, was the ability to be able to figure out what is noise and what is signal, and he differentiates those things. And he said Steve Jobs was he was relentlessly disciplined on focused on 80% of his time was focused on the signal, like what is the most important thing, and then 20% of his time was with noise, other stuff. He said there's very few people that can do that and maintain that, but he identified that as like it was one of his keys to success. And he talks about people that are able to do that are are wildly more successful because like this is noise, this is stuff that I need to pay attention to. And I think that is a what does Paul Martinelli always say? He says life is a fight for territory. And it's
yeah,
in our mind. What are we giving up ground to? What who are we allowing in? What are we allowing? What voices are we listening to? And I think so. Knowing those things is number one, and then number two is, now, do you have the discipline and the structure and the mechanisms and the support around you to maintain that? That's noise. That's noise. Dave, look back over here. This is where we need to be. And I think those
yeah.
two things go hand in hand. But the first one is you got to get that clarity.
Right. I love that because I believe what you just said about 80% on signal, 20% on noise. I believe right now that number is at best inverted at
Probably.
20% on
Oh
signal,
gosh.
80% on noise. And I
Yeah.
think, Steve Jobs was a very, very uh, disciplined and talented individual. So if you get the exact opposite, I bet you it's 90-10 or 95-5. People are distracted by the
Yeah.
noise and not seeing the signal. Because the inner capacity assessment does go to energy. And I talk about energy: mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual. Mental energy, it's not like when I say mental health, I mean, no disrespect to people that have real issues with
Yeah.
depression or anxiety, but mentally healthy leaders have a plan that they focus on. So they're grabbing from clarity and bringing it backwards into their health. Because if they wake up each day, I mean, I've got it sitting right here. It's on my desk, but this is my North Star every day. I actually rewrite in my North Star every day what my vision and purpose is, what my goals are, so that every day I can actually become part of it through writing it, through reading it, through feeling it. But most people, they get up and it's like Groundhog Day. They're just
Hmm.
getting into their day, and they don't have
Yeah.
that North Star to anchor them.
No. No,
So
but Rich, it's even this. And listen, I've used you as an example a lot. I don't know if you still do this exactly at this time or not, but I use you all the time. I said, when I talk about that discipline of knowing clarity and maintaining priority and focused on what my next steps are and evaluating. As I said, I know every night or every Sunday night at 5 o'clock, my friend Rich is sitting on his couch and he's got his iPad out and he's going through his wheel of life and he's going through ranking his last week. And I said, I know that the discipline of doing that has gotten him to where he is.
yeah,
And all I'm saying, and it's a simple thing. It takes 5 minutes just to evaluate. Here's where I've been, and what do I need to reevaluate for the coming days and the coming week. And but whatever it is, I think that's what most people don't do, is they don't identify what does a win look like.
Right.
it doesn't matter whether you use a wheel of life and what are the 8 priority areas of my life and how do I rank them on a scale of 1 to 10 and what are the steps I'm going to do if I'm below a 6. All of those, whatever that is.
Right.
It doesn't have to be complicated. It's
Right.
just the simplicity of coming back to what what am I defining as a win? What
I
is that? How do I know if I'm going to get there now?
I love that because I take my dad fishing a lot during the summer times on Lake Michigan. And we get into some spirited conversations. Sometimes absolutely unproductive, sometimes like good things come out of it. But I can remember a couple years ago, I said, Dad, my biggest concern as I coach people is that Americans have forgotten how to win.
Mm,
And we got to that point where you have to define what a win is. So, like, if
yeah,
if people aren't using scoreboards, I don't know how to win a game that has no scoreboard.
yeah,
And a lot of
good point.
businesses aren't using a scoreboard so that they can articulate to their team, hey, if that number is bigger than this number, we lost. If
Yeah,
this number is bigger than that number, we win. Let's
yeah,
try to win, team. Like it's just mind blowing that people don't know what the win is.
right.
And personally, I don't think people know what they want. They know what they don't want. People focus too much on what they don't want, not enough on what they want. I said it this week in my Leaders Edge group coaching call. One guy lamented, it was like we were pulling lamentations and out of the Bible, and he was lamenting on there's three things that people control, but I'm having a hard time controlling this, this, and this. The three things, he says, "How do I do this, Rich?" I said, "Focus on what you want, not on what you don't want. You're focused on all the negatives."
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
counterintuitive, but focus on where you're trying to go. And even during the negative stuff, problem solve the negative stuff going on to move you to the win.
yeah. Well, we've said this before. I remember this when I used to ride a motorcycle. Was they say when you start driving off the road, what do people end up doing? They like, oh, don't hit the tree, don't hit the tree, don't hit the tree, don't hit the tree. What are you gonna go right for the stinking
Smack.
tree, you know?
Yeah,
Um, but I think you're right on. I think it's knowing what you want, stay focused on those things. Something else that you said I think is important in that process of in a practical way that I think gets in the way is not only do people not know what they want or where they're going, they don't define what a win is. I think part of the reason is there can be like a little like paralysis of analysis or that sense of wanting it to be perfect, waiting for the
sure.
perfect. I come out of that like perfectionist idea of I want this to be the perfect plan. I want to think it through before I execute. I want to think it all through. And just reality is that's just not the way it works. And I think
Right.
that has slowed me down. That's been more of an excuse for me in the past than it has been an effective coping tool. Is to really say, what you said was I evaluate on a daily basis, even like, hey, do I need to redefine this just a little bit? And it's not changing like, oh, I want to do this, not I'm going to do that, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. It's not that. It's making tweaks along the way, saying like, hey, what do I need to improve? What this, getting clarity on where you're going, and knowing that may change and that may evolve and that may alter just a little bit as you go down the road. But again, don't be attached to the outcome. Be attached to the growth that's going to get you to that place. And I think when we can give ourselves a little bit of grace that way and say, as far as I know right now, this is where I'm going. This is what I'm looking for. And just it's movement. It's about movement and moving forward. And then those things will become evident. You'll learn and make adjustments along.
It's interesting that you just said that. You brought up Paul Martinelli a little while ago. I've been tuning into a deeper sense of Paul. Paul, does talk, and the irony of it is, when I started my journey into the coaching business, this is I learned from a woman that was attached to Bob Proctor, and obviously Paul was attached to Bob Proctor, but so far as I know, those two people never crossed paths. Paul and this other woman. She was like an international VP for Bob Proctor, so she traveled to Australia a lot. But the teaching is the core, the seven laws that have a predictability on success. And I have been really, really honing in on Paul in his teaching that it's not mine to judge whether something works or not. It's not mine to judge whether it's going to have a good outcome or a bad outcome, because good and bad exist equally inside of
Mhm.
the universe. The
Yeah,
reality is, some of the things we're going to do are going to be bad. Some of the things we're going to do are going to be good. They're going to balance themselves out. But mine is to do the activity. You were just saying it, like, I got a plan and I just need to stay calm and move forward. I don't need to get cranked up if I fail, because that's part of the process. That
yeah,
has been the most freeing thing for me, that has actually built confidence, is I accept that there's going to be bad things that are going to happen. It's outside of my control. What is in my control is that I keep trying to produce an outcome, good or bad.
yeah, yeah. I tell you, I just had a meeting yesterday with an executive leader and talking about in his organization wanting to create that environment where people know about have clarity about themselves, about who they are, so that they can operate in with a sense of freedom and purpose and direction and yeah, that confidence that says this is where I'm going, and the confidence even in spite of the fact that you may make a mistake and you may screw up and you may get off track, but to say that's part of the process. What am
Right.
I learning? How am I? What guardrails do I need to reestablish or establish? What are things that I need to do to get back on track? And I think that's the other part of it. I guess that's kind of part two of clarity is how do you stay focused on it once you have clarity? How do you stay down that road? But again, I just still come back to why is it that it is such an epidemic of a problem of a missing component is I think people don't know what the win is. I
Yeah.
think that they don't they are stuck on a sense of perfection, wanting to have the perfect plan, and there is no such thing. And then I think we make it too complicated, and I
Yeah.
think we can get bored with it. Of like, oh, I feel like I've been doing this again and again and again. Like, no, that's how you're successful. Is you
Right.
just you keep going, you keep going, you keep going, you keep going, and that persistence is what gets you to the results that you want.
That's what I was thinking, is like that, that person's under resourced, that they want to change too much, or they stop and they do too many resets. Like,
Yeah,
I don't feel like it today. And then
yeah,
3 days later, they guilt themselves, damn it. And then they reset and start over.
yeah,
That's part of the problem. The consistency and persistence are the two characteristics that somebody that follows through on their plan will likely, give themselves a fighting chance to win. But I also think people pleasing is a big part of this, or insecurities, because it's funny. There's not a lot of people pleasing in the divisive world we live in. People don't really give much about what another person wants. They
yeah,
just want their voice heard. But when it comes to getting into a work environment, I see a lot of people, their insecurities raise up, and they're so insecure in themselves that they will say yes to something that is not part of their plan, if they even have a plan in their head
yeah,
or on paper.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Like, when you have a plan, it has polite, kind no's. No, that's not part of my plan. I've turned down coaching clients recently. No, that's not part of my plan. That's not something I want. When I know what my plan is, then polite and kind no's they're a wonderful thing.
but I got to tell you, this just happened to me just in the last 2 weeks. Had a big conversation about a big opportunity that was presented to me, and and for the first time, and it was something like there's like two sides, two voices in my head. One's like, jump at the chance, like take it. This is like, what are you talking about? But my first reaction was like, I know I should jump at it, but that's not really in alignment with who I am and what I know about myself, and where I feel like I have clarity on in some very key areas that it just became an easy no
Right.
of like not that, but let's talk about this. Let's adapt it that way. And I'm telling you, it made all the difference. And I think yeah, it helped. I know it helped me to in a very massive way to be able to avoid what I think down the road I would have been like, I think I regret this, I because I did this just because I felt like I should. And but when I because I had clarity, because I had a sense of this is who I am, this is what I'm good at, this is what fuels me, this is what energizes me, this is where I'm at my best. I was able to say no to something that was awesome. That was really a
Right.
fantastic thing. But I'm like, but it's not where I'm going.
Right. What I really love about your story is I I believe that high performers don't rely on memory and they don't rely on motivation.
Mm,
They rely on structure. And structure is you're structured in your purpose and like that plan. You know who you are, and it allows you. I said yes to a bunch of clients last fall that I lacked clarity in the yeses and the nos, and that burned me out. I have empathy and compassion for all the people out there
yeah, yeah,
because I realized it last fall and I made some major shifts in my yeses and nos. I made a really, really conscious shift in my structure of actually how I coach because I believe that I have to coach people from where they're at. And if their energy and clarity are in a deficit, that's where we have to start. So the
mm,
structure that I actually go through, I just did I have three assessments: the inner capacity, the personal leadership, and a business audit. I mashed the answers from a person together. I just assessed an owner, and we really came right down to you have to work on yourself personally first. You have to get structure and plan because without it, you will always be low in energy and overwhelmed.
yeah,
And we have a 5-part plan that we're putting in front of him, and that will become a coaching client. But taking the assessments and mashing them together, people will show us where they're at. Now it's just how do we move to, that the land of milk and honey, where
yeah,
everything is great and they're feeling good about their business, their life, and how they get to spend their time.
yeah. You talk about having empathy for I do too. And that sense of feeling like it makes me sad. It hurts. It makes me hurt for people that are just they're overwhelmed, they're tired, they're exhausted. They lack all that energy. They lack that sense of like I've got a job, and I don't have a
Right,
career. I don't have a passion. I don't have something I'm pursuing. And I believe everybody. I think that's in all of us. We're created that way, and I think that
right.
to help people to find what that is and to do the hard work of of taking time to dial in on that is so worth it. And it just breaks my heart that so many people just settle for what's right in front of them right now, just putting out
Oh,
fires,
that
just dealing with the urgency.
just settles. Well, like that, the call to action of this conversation is don't normalize this.
Yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah,
when you're in a state that you are uncomfortable and overwhelmed and burnt out and tired or frustrated, and you're expressing that on other people, don't normalize that.
right,
Do the work to get clear. Now, if you don't know how to do it, if you're attached to Dave in this conversation, say, Dave, can you give me the assessments? I'm going to give Dave the assessments so he can share them with people. He's going to read their data and help them. If you're attached to me, you're going to say, Rich, can I have the assessments? You're going to then be able to get a report that comes out of the assessment that says, this is what you said based on what we asked you. So this is what we want you to do. If you can do it without Dave or you can do it without Rich, we're going to high five you, give you a thumbs up, and say good luck. But we're here. And when you do engage with us, it's just called coaching. We're your thinking partner, we're your friend, and we're going to help you be successful.
yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah. I love it. I love it. And you just and I think that's then surrounding yourself with people once you get that, and with your and creating an environment around you, a support structure around you to just stay at it, just
right,
stay at it.
stay
I've
at
got
it.
that with people, yeah, with other people, with things in my life too. I said, hey, I committed to something, and I said, I'm an open book. You check in with me in a week, in 2 weeks, and see how I'm doing on it. Because that's what we need. That accountability, that sense of follow up and follow through. In
Yeah.
fact, I just read a statistic yesterday. about Gallup organization was talking about one of the things that is most lacking, that is severely lacking in organizations, is people don't know how to do that. They don't know how to. They don't know how to build accountability amongst their teams and stuff. So we have a lot of good ideas, and we come up with something. We're all excited, and we get out of the chute, and then like a month later, we're back to the same old thing again. And I think that's where coaching comes in. That's where having a good network of people around you that will help you to stay at that what seems redundant again and again and again and again. That's how
I
you win.
I completely agree. I remember, yeah, we were doing Passport to Growth when COVID was around, and I think you saved me and I saved you because we were able to do life together even during a shutdown. And I
Yeah.
think that that's the thing that we continue to encourage people is life is meant to be done together, not in isolation.
Yeah.
So with that, again, call to action. If anybody needs to be a part of a community, needs the support, needs to be held accountable, reach out to Dave or reach out to Rich, and we'll be glad to support you. So thanks, Dave, for a great conversation,
Awesome.
and
Always.
I'll see you in another one soon.